I'm Dan Guerrero, and I produce and I direct, and I also wrote and perform a solo show called Gaytino. Can you guess what it's about? I was born in Tucson, Arizona, as was my dad, Lalo Guerrero, and my mom, Margaret, and but I grew up in East LA. People often ask me, well, when did you know you were gay? Probably about the same time I was born, because it was just always there. So I never had a coming out, as it were. I more or less oozed out. There was never big revelation talk with my parents. It just kind of happened. And I think part of that is because of the times. I mean, I grew up in the 50s and 1950s, and I moved to New York when I was 20. I lived there for 20 years. So you come home once a year, holiday time. After a few of those visits, they stop asking, when are you going to get married? It just kind of goes away. So Gaytino came together in a kind of interesting way. A few years ago, I was watching television, as I am prone to do, and I was thrilled to suddenly see gay characters on so many shows, especially in sitcoms. I kept thinking, great, wow, who'd have thought? And then one day I'm thinking, where's the Latinos? I never would have dreamed I would see gay characters before I would see Latino characters in TV or film. I never would have guessed that. So I started to look at my two communities, the gay community, the Latino community. I started to seek, similarities, and there were so many things in common. And in the middle of all this thought process, I came up with the word, Gaytino. And I thought, that's a clever little thing, so I trademarked it. Okay. And then I thought, well, now what am I going to do with this? And I was going through other things in my life. I've been producing and directing for a good many years now. And I still love it, but I like challenges. I like new things. And I started as a performer. That's why I moved to New York when I was 20. And I was a performer in musicals there. And I always thought one day when I was old and broken down and bitter and nobody cared, I'd go back to performing. Hello. So I thought, well, maybe it's time. So I decided to write a solo show because I thought I had something to say about my two communities. And because of my dad and who he was, and because of Carlos and who he was, I thought, okay, this will be Chicano history, gay history, from a very personal point of view. I've been around a long time. I performed at the Kennedy Center, Gaytino at the Kennedy Center. That's still one of my proudest moments, I think. I'm like, wow, to be singing about Dad and Chicano history and Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta and Luis Valdez and Carlos on the Kennedy Center stage was heady. Yeah, it was, the 70s was discos and poppers and, Fire Island and sex. Who cared about a condom? It was there. And then overnight, and the losses were so quick, and this sounds weird, but honestly, you couldn't keep up, you couldn't count. I'd be talking to my friend in New York, and he'd say, oh, Terry died. I'm like, oh my God, oh wait a minute, I thought he died. No, that was Larry. Oh, Larry, oh yeah, but you could not keep up. It was numbing, and it was horrible, and the fear. In the beginning they were saying, oh, it could have could have been, there in your body for up to 20 years, dormant. 20 years. Well, who hadn't had safe sex in 20 years, for God's sake? So every little pimple, every little thing, it was, but losing all your friends. And for a long time, it was colleagues and actors that I represented, or playwrights. I was in the New York theater, for God's sake, and they were going fast and furious, but no one in my circle, so we were like safe. We were protected by whatever. Thank you, universe. And then, at the same time, in New York, my first lover there, and still a friend, 25 years later, Larry, pulls me aside to tell me that he has AIDS. And on the flight home, I'm trying to wrap my head around that, and I'm not doing a good job of it. And I get back here, and I get a phone call from Carlos that he has AIDS, my boyhood friend. At the same time, they died Larry died in March of '89, Carlos in December of '89. Then it was even harder because there was no safe circle. There was nobody was safe. Yeah. I look at photographs from that time, I represented half the original cast of A Chorus Line during my New York agent days, and I look at all those beautiful young boys. None of them are here. An entire generation of young people was wiped out, particularly in the arts, Yeah, it was not good. I think it's very, very important to mentor our young people, our young Latinos, our young gays, our young gay Latinos, gay-tinos as it were. It's very important to mentor them, and if our experience can make it easier in any way. I mean, growing up in the 50s, there was nobody. I mean, really, neither Latino nor gay. There wasn't anybody ahead. And certainly, there were in the 40s and 30s, it was even more difficult. So I'm not saying, that was the first generation that had issues. But, and today is so complicated for young people because all the bullying and the suicides, and I think to myself, well, but it's everywhere. There's gay celebrities, they're on the cover of magazines. Why is it, we weren't killing ourselves back then. I don't understand. I would think it'd be somewhat easier, but it's not. Because of all cyberspace and the net and all that, it's magnified. So when they're bullied, it's not one kid in the schoolyard. It goes viral. And it's just huge. The impact is gigantic. So even though one would think it'd be easier because they can go online, they can see Gay-Tino, they can see the Honor 41, and they might go, wow, it doesn't necessarily make it easier. I like to think it helps. But we have a great responsibility to our young people. There's no question.
Hola.